I watched my whole family shatter into a million pieces, and I have to live with the shocking truth. It was all my fault. My son cheated, but my mistake, my terrible, rage-filled, and utterly reckless crime, made everything 100 times worse. I know how this is going to sound. I already know, deep down, that I'm the villain here. I have played this moment over and over again in the endless, quiet nights, trying to find a way to make it make sense, to find a point where I could have turned back, but there is none. I just need to finally say it somewhere because my whole world is falling apart, brick by crumbling brick, and I have no idea how to fix any of it. My son and his girlfriend had been together for almost a year, living together in her place. They were navigating that messy, confusing stage of early adult life, and honestly, I thought they were doing great. I saw a real, lasting future there, a stability I hadn't expected them to find so soon. Then, last month, the betrayal hit. And it didn't just hit. It detonated and took everything with it. He was unbelievably reckless. He brought another woman into her house, into her bed. She walked in on them. Think about that moment. The sheer, blinding white heat of that discovery. The house instantly became a war zone. The screaming, the tears, the sound of things breaking, the absolute, uncontrolled destruction of a year's worth of trust. In the chaotic, desperate scramble of trying to leave and collect his things, my son swung his arm, and it slammed into her face. He swore to me it was an accident, a tragic, flailing mishap in the sheer confusion and panic of being caught. I believed him then, hoping desperately that was true because the alternative was unthinkable, but the brutal, visible fact is it happened. She kicked him out instantly, screaming at him to never come back. He showed up at my door that night, a complete shell of the confident young man I knew. Devastated. He was physically shaking, hysterical, repeating over and over that he'd ruined the best thing in his life. He kept crying that he didn't know why he did it, that it was just a stupid, impulsive mistake, and he wished he could just take it all back. The sight of him, so utterly broken, twisted something cold and hard inside me. And here's where my nightmare truly began. I didn't step up as a rational parent. I didn't tell him to stop running, to take accountability for his choices, to apologize properly, or to give her the space she desperately needed. No. I got angry. And it was a misplaced, toxic anger. Angry at her. Angry at the whole messy situation. Angry that she'd thrown him out so fast. Angry that she wouldn't even hear his miserable side of the story. I know how ridiculously unfair that was, how much I was twisting the facts to suit my own protective need, but in that primal, gut-wrenching moment, all I could think about was shielding my child from the immediate, painful, and deserved consequences of his actions. I just wanted the pain to stop, both his and mine. My nephew, who is close to my son, offered to go back and help pack up the rest of his things while his ex was at work the next day. And right there, in that moment of dark opportunity, the worst idea I've ever had in my entire life took root. It was a flash of pure, petty satisfaction mixed with this overwhelming, twisted sense of protective justice. She deserved something back. I convinced myself in a fit of delusion. Something small. Something to make it even. A piece of dark, satisfying revenge for hurting my son. I went out and bought a bucket of fast-setting concrete, the kind meant for fence posts. My nephew and I drove to her house, paranoia clouding our judgment, but the need for vengeance was stronger. We poured that hardening mix directly down her plumbing, the toilet, the shower drain, the laundry drain. We made sure it got into everything. The kind of cement that sets quickly, rock hard, and basically requires tearing the entire house apart to remove. I remember driving away, feeling a strange mix of nauseating guilt and a twisted sense of accomplishment. I felt clever, untouchable, in the moment. I thought we were getting away with a secret, private act of vengeance that no one would ever trace back to us. The initial damage was estimated at over $18,000. We really thought we were in the clear, that my foolish little secret was safe. Then, 2 days later, the police showed up at my son's workplace. But they didn't come for me. They arrested my son while he was on his lunch break. The shock was paralyzing, utterly debilitating. It turns out there was a small side yard CCTV camera we missed in our rush. But here's the most gut-wrenching, soul-crushing twist of the whole thing. The camera didn't record us. It only recorded my son returning to the property after we left. He was walking around, pacing, checking the locks, clearly distraught and confused, totally unaware of what we had done. On that grainy video, however, it looked for all the world like he was supervising or participating in the destruction we caused. The police believed he had orchestrated the whole thing. Now he was being charged with felony property destruction. A felony. A real criminal charge that could derail his entire future. My nephew was panicking. My husband was confused and angry, demanding to know what happened, and I still hadn't told him the full, agonizing truth. Meanwhile, her family was preparing to sue us into oblivion. And my son was sitting in a jail cell, sobbing, asking why this was happening to him, asking why he was being punished for something he didn't do. He kept crying that someone from her job must have tried to hurt her back. I had to sit there and listen to his innocent pleas, unable to confess that I was the one who made this nightmare real. The guilt was suffocating me whole. I wanted to protect him, to make him feel less alone. And instead, I had ruined everything he had left. We managed to scrape together the money for bail, which completely wiped out most of our life savings, but there was no way I could stomach leaving him in a cell another night. When he finally came home, there was no yelling, no crying. He was just quiet, completely emptied out. The silence in the house was deafening, a thick blanket of misery. And knowing that I was the root cause of that unbearable, empty silence made my own soul ache and feel physically unbearable. I knew I had to try to fix it, or at least beg for forgiveness. I drove over to her house, honestly meaning to apologize for the damage I caused to her home, but a relative stepped outside and shut me down immediately. "Any communication has to go through lawyers now," she said, her voice completely flat. I walked away without saying a word. My desperate attempt at repentance immediately shut down. And the devastation got worse when I finally learned the truth about the house. It wasn't just a random rental or temporary place. It was her grandparents' inherited home, the one they had passed down to her, the one she was slowly, lovingly renovating room by room, planning to make it her long-term future. And I, out of spite and staggering stupidity, had desecrated that sacred memory. The world started collapsing even faster. My son was instantly fired from his retail job. The story spread like wildfire across the small town, and the truth, that I was the one with the concrete, was utterly irrelevant. The public narrative was simple and brutal. He cheated. He hit her. Then he poured concrete down her drains to ruin her home. The public reputation stuck, and that's all that mattered now. The online harassment was constant. People were messaging me, calling me a criminal, a terrible mother, a psychopath. They were messaging my son, telling him to disappear. Worse, they were posting our home address in comment threads. The fear was paralyzing. My extended family was mortified and started cutting us off. They didn't want the shame. My nephew eventually confessed to the police, which I was grateful for, but he was clearly trying to save himself. He threw me under the bus, confirming I came up with the idea, bought the concrete, and drove us there. Now, I was officially being charged with felony property damage. My son was still facing a misdemeanor assault charge for hitting her. The repair estimate climbed past $20,000 and was still rising as they tore open more walls to reach the pipes. TikTok was full of videos, the damaged house, and now, her bruised face from that night. The whole world was mocking us, stitching our tragedy into their online content. By the way, if you're still with me and wondering how much worse this gets, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Trust me, the fallout from this is unbelievable. You won't believe what happens next. That night, my husband and I had the worst fight of our entire marriage. He finally had enough information to understand the magnitude of my crime and the sheer irrationality of it all. He told me I'd acted emotionally, not responsibly. Your job as a mother was to teach him how to handle consequences, not commit a crime on his behalf, he seethed. His voice was cold, his eyes filled with a terrifying disappointment. You didn't protect him. You made everything worse. Everything. He slept on the couch that night, and we haven't truly spoken since. My son was physically here, but emotionally, he was gone. No job, no girlfriend, no peace, just the looming threat of a felony charge. I had caused the part that was now completely irreversible. Weeks passed, and the online hate only intensified. Strangers were making videos, memes, entire comment threads devoted to tearing us apart, treating our lives like cheap, cruel entertainment. Then, the situation escalated beyond anything I could have imagined. My son, without telling us, walked out and went straight to her workplace. She's a nurse at the local hospital. She was in the middle of treating a critically ill, well-known public figure, and my son burst in, hysterical, begging, crying, saying he couldn't live without her, pleading for her to just hear him out. He refused to leave when security came. The patient's family, all highly public figures themselves, recorded the entire awful thing on their phones. They were the ones who physically dragged my son out of the room. Videos of my son on the floor, collapsed, grabbing at the air, screaming her name, were suddenly everywhere. People called him dangerous, obsessive, mentally unstable. A restraining order was issued immediately. It wasn't just a personal scene, it was a public disruption during a medical emergency. I felt him slipping further and further away from reality every day. I knew I had pushed him to this fragile, desperate edge. Then a new, final twist. The other woman, the one my son cheated with, was dragged into the online storm. In a viral video, she tearfully explained her side. She said my son had lied to her. He told her he owned the house and that his relationship was open and ending. She believed him because he seemed so stable, so confident. She even admitted to telling his ex to leave, thinking she was the homeowner, only to realize she was being lied to herself when the ex revealed the truth about the inherited house. But then she dropped the final, devastating bomb on my son, and the last thread of hope we were holding on to. She said she saw him punch her. She saw the moment he snapped, when he realized he had been caught and told to leave. No one, absolutely no one, believes the accident story anymore. And because of her words, they shouldn't. When my husband watched that video, something inside him shattered completely. He didn't say a word at first. He just stood up, walked to my son's room, and told him to leave. The quiet rage was terrifying, a heavy, silent storm. My son begged, he cried. He tried to say she was lying, but my husband didn't waver. I didn't raise you to be this. Cheating is bad enough. Hurting her after she caught you? You don't get to stay here. I fell to pieces, begging him not to throw his son out onto the street. My husband looked at me like I was a stranger and said, "Then you can go with him. Because I am not living in this house with a liar and a coward, and I am not living with the woman who helped him destroy someone else's life." I was silenced. I didn't argue. I had no right to. Our son left, sobbing, picked up by a cousin. My daughter called soon after, asking me why I did what I did, why I let my emotions take control, why I hurt another woman and ruined our own family. "You protected his ego, not him," she said, and then she hung up. The house went quiet, but it was hollow, empty. Months passed. My husband and I were strangers, ghosts to each other, sharing space only because of the crippling debt. I kept trying to talk about bringing our son home, about getting him help, but every time I pushed, he shut me down harder. One night, I pushed too far. He finally let loose everything he'd been holding back for years. "You are the one who created this," he said. "You protected him from every consequence, every hard lesson he ever needed to grow up." He said he spent years trying to teach accountability, but I always stepped in, always softened things, always saved him from discomfort. He told me this is exactly how men like that end up. Delusional, entitled, dangerous. That our son would end up hurting someone even worse one day if he didn't stop now. Hearing him say that felt like a physical assault because I knew, deep down, he was right. All this time, I told myself I was protecting my child when I was actually protecting the worst, most selfish parts of him. My daughter now barely speaks to me, polite but distant. My court case finally concluded. No jail time for me, but the financial punishment was crushing. community service, and restitution totaling over $50,000 in damages, not including emotional distress. We had to refinance our home to cover what insurance wouldn't. The legal fees were staggering. I had to get a part-time job. I haven't worked in decades, scrubbing floors and stocking shelves just to make payments. The guilt of my daughter trying to send us money sat heavy in my chest. My son's lawyer warned us that he was lucky not to have been charged with interfering in medical treatment because the man he walked in on was in a coma for weeks, a detail I hadn't known until then. If that situation had gone differently, my son would be facing something much, much worse. Then came my son's sentencing. He was found guilty of misdemeanor assault. The judge handed down a 6-month jail sentence. 6 months. I broke down in the courtroom, pleading with the judge, but he didn't waver. He said my son chose to lie and minimize the truth, even in the face of evidence, and that consequences were necessary. His ex-girlfriend's victim impact statement was the hardest part. Shaking but steady, she spoke of the betrayal and how the punch shattered the last bit of love she had left. But the part that cut me to my core was when she spoke about her grandparents' house. She said it felt like their memory had been desecrated. She made it clear there would never be forgiveness. The room was silent. When they called for my son to be taken into custody, he didn't fight it. He just turned to us once, his face thin and hollow, and whispered, "I'm sorry." My husband, standing beside me, walked over to his son's ex, hugged her, and said, "I'm sorry." I stayed where I was, knowing I had no right to go near her. A couple of months later, my husband told me he couldn't do this anymore. He was selling our family home, the place we raised our children in, our supposed stability, our future. He said he isn't angry anymore, just deeply disappointed in himself and in me for letting love become protection instead of guidance. He said our son didn't become this way alone. We made him this way. He was putting a deposit down on a studio apartment. He was leaving. I started the agonizing process of packing the home we'd built, boxing up photos and memories like they were just things. Every corner was a reminder of a life that no longer existed. My son in jail, my husband gone, my daughter keeping her distance. I did this. It's been a couple of years now. This is not a happy ending. When my son was released, he was a stranger. Thinner, quieter. Something in him had closed off permanently. With a criminal record, he works menial jobs, warehouse shifts, night stalking, no complaints. We found a small, shabby apartment to share, but we don't live together. He pays his full half of everything. I carry my own weight now. I don't want to be a burden again. He apologized for everything, for the betrayal, for the violence, for the life he destroyed, but he has never forgiven me. His wages are garnished for the settlement. His father only covered my restitution. He did not pay for our son's defense. The divorce went through quietly. My ex is doing well, stable, calmer. He's seeing someone new, a single mother with a hardworking son. They say he smiles again. My daughter is married, expecting her first child. She keeps her distance, polite, careful. And I am here, in this tiny apartment, with a son I broke without meaning to. A son who needed love and guidance, and I gave him protection and excuses. A son I thought I was saving when I was really setting him up to fall. We don't talk about the past. We don't talk about the future. Sometimes I hear him crying quietly in his room. Sometimes he hears me crying in mine. This is the life my decisions made. There is no redemption arc, not for me. There are just consequences that never, ever stop arriving. This is where our story ends. When I chose to pour that cement, I thought I was protecting my son. Tell me what you honestly think. Did I make my son a criminal by trying too hard to save him, or was he already headed down that path? I really want to know your perspective.